and welcome to another episode of 15 Minutes of Fame with Dawn Branch. Welcome and thank you for once again tuning in. At 15 Minutes of Fame, we bring you industry professionals from all across the board throughout entertainment. And we bring them on so they can help share their journey and their experiences and possibly help the next generation coming up. So, again, we thank you so much for tuning in every Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on dawnlivenow.com and also Facebook Live and what else? Instagram and I believe YouTube. Yes, so welcome. Tonight's guest is Professor Carla Lester from Bethune-Cookman University out here in Daytona, Florida. So let's give it up for Miss Professor Carla Lester. Hello, welcome.
Hello, good evening.
You look fabulous. I missed you.
Thank you. I know it seems like it's been a long time since we've had a chance to see each other.
Very long time, but I mean, friends for life. So,
Yes,
welcome to the
definitely.
show.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, without further ado, let's begin. Who
Okay.
is Professor Carla Lester?
That's a tough question. Um, First and foremost, I am an educator, an arts activist, a performer, and a sister, an auntie, and of course a child of God. So those are sort of my main adjectives.
Yes. Now, we have several of your sisters watching this evening. Now, what might that be? What sisters might that be?
Well, they're all, hopefully, there are a number of them. My sorors from the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and my Link sisters from the Daytona Beach chapter of the Links Incorporated, as well
Awesome.
as
Well,
many of my family and friends.
thank you so much. And I hope that I get to meet them one day. I will come to one of your functions. I know you do many, and I
Yes,
will love to come and meet them someday. So thank you
of
again for
course.
inviting your friends and family.
My
So you
pleasure.
are in charge of the communications department. I believe it has a new title now. I wrote it down. Communication Studies, Theater, and Dance. Yes?
Well,
So the dance is how we're affiliated, not so much the theater. Um,
right.
when was it that you realized that you love to dance? Like, how did that happen? How did that journey begin?
Well, I started taking dance actually when I was 3. My dad was in the military, was in the US Army. We were living in Germany. And so the story I've been told is that at the time we actually were living in an apartment building that was owned by a German woman who taught dance upstairs. And I would hear the music and I wanted to go. And so she finally told my mom, bring her up. And that's my first ballet class. So I have a picture of me really teeny tiny at a bar with some lace pattern tights on, which would be so unacceptable now, and ballet shoes. And I think I fell in love with dance probably by the time I was about 9 is
Okay.
when I really, that passion and love for it, that I enjoyed going to class. And
Mhm.
I was at our local studio, and like most kids, I was taking ballet, tap, and jazz. And just the excitement and the fun and the energy that we would have in class was just something
Mhm.
that I absolutely fell in love with. I had also been doing theater by that time. I had done a couple of musicals with the local theater company. So just that being on the stage, which
Mhm.
is funny because most people think if you're on the stage, if you like to perform, you're very extroverted. And I happen to tend to think that I'm a very introverted kind of person. I love to be home
Mhm.
reading. I like to travel, but even in traveling, I sort of kind of instill to myself and like to explore on my own. But there's something about the power of the stage and art and the way in which it makes people feel, how it changes people, that just was something I was drawn to and wanted to be a part of.
I totally agree with you. It's like an exchange system. Definitely. Like you're giving them something and they give back. It's an energy. It's just comparable. So I wanted to ask, was all of this in Germany or did this happen in the States? Like when did you come to the States to
So
dance?
my dad was actually stationed in Germany twice. So the first time was from the time I was 3 until I was about 5, just before I would have gotten ready to start school. And then we lived in Arizona for a while, for about 2 years. Then we went back to Germany when I was in third grade, and I was there for third grade and fourth grade. And then came back to the States. And for the rest of the time, I was here, primarily in North Carolina, which is where my mother is from. And my dad did do a third tour overseas in Belgium for 2 years, but we didn't go that third time. So most of my adolescence after kindergarten, first grade, and second grade was spent um, in North Carolina. So that's where I consider home. That's where my roots are.
That's North Carolina. Well, I want to thank your dad for his services. I mean, that did you ever want to go into that field by any chance? Like, were you
Um,
pressured?
it's funny because, my dad did 22 years. He retired. He worked civil service. My mom also worked civil service. So I literally grew up around the military, and I have just a huge amount of respect for it. And I considered it for about 2 seconds. Um, and part of that was really when my dad was airborne when we were at Fort Bragg, because I really wanted to jump out of an airplane.
I could, yeah.
But then I thought about all the other stuff he had to do, like sleep outside when he would have to go and do his training and stuff, and I decided that was not what I wanted.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad because I got a chance to meet you at least in through dance, and you're an awesome choreographer, teacher. We'll get to all of that, but just I'm just immensely proud of you. If I could just say that because I do look up to you like my mentor. So I just wanted to
Thank
say
you.
yes. Okay, so now you're in North Carolina and you go to undergrad. I guess you have double masters. So talk about that. You hear
Yes.
that, young kids? She has an undergrad and her double masters. Okay, go ahead.
So I finished high school, and at the time, I wanted to be a pharmacist. So I applied to Wake Forest University and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and ended up going to Chapel Hill. So I am a Tar Heel born and bred. And I started out in pharmacy, changed my major my sophomore year to biomedical material science. And as much as I loved science and math, I missed performing, and I was really having a hard time with being in the lab all the time, being away from that artistic side of myself. And so went and talked to a couple of counselors and found my way in at the time what was called the speech communication department, and really started. Carolina's communication department had the basic speech component, but then they also had a component that was called performance studies that looked at how we perform ourselves every day. So not just plays and things that are designed for the stage, but how life and how we are sometimes our performances, and also how other things can be put into performance. And so I made my way there at the end of my junior year, which
Okay.
is a little, that made it a little bit rough. Did
Mm-hmm.
summer school, did my senior year, and did summer school again. Graduated with my Bachelor of Arts in speech communication. Set out a year to try to decide what I was going to do. And one of my mentors that I met during that time was Dr. D. Soyini Madison, and she was teaching in the department. And she was also really close with with my best friend's father. And so I spent a lot of time that year talking to her, and she said, "You ought to apply for the master's program." And I kind of looked. She's like, "You should." And so I applied. I was accepted. And by that time, we had changed the name of the department to Communication Studies because they had added the film portion that had used to be in a different department was now added into the speech communications department. So we became communication studies. And I did my master's. It was a 2-year program in performance studies. And I get asked a lot because if you've ever seen my license tag or my email address, you see this spider metaphor, and my quote that I have, have you ever seen a queen spider dance? She seems
Yes.
to be kneeling, but she is not. She's always getting up. But I did my thesis on the spider metaphor in Native American and African American culture as a symbol of empowerment for women of color. And so I took several different pieces of work, poems, excerpts from a novel that I had read by a Hopi Indian woman, and put them together into a performance, and wove it with some different things, dance and spoken word and movement. And so that was my thesis, and finished. Was looking for a job, wanted to stay close to home, and we used to have a book that had all of the different places that they had received job announcements from, and they were grouped by state. And there was nothing in North Carolina, nothing in South Carolina, and I was like, "Ooh, Florida sounds like a great place to live. It's always sunny."
Yes.
Flipped to Florida and saw the announcement for Bethune-Cookman. Applied and didn't hear anything for a while, and sort of forgot about it. Was trying to finish up my thesis, trying to finish writing, applying to other places, looking for other things, and got a call from the chair at the time, Dr. Roseman, and she said, "We want you to come interview." And the rest is history.
Wow. What was that? Can you walk us through what it was for you? Like, what are the steps for your interview process and the vetting and all of that? How did that work?
So what happened when I came in was I came in that Thursday. Friday morning, I met with the department, and at the time that I came, we were Bethune-Cookman College. The department was actually mass communications and speech communication. So it was mass and speech communication. It was under the direction of Dr. Johnson Akinleye, who is actually now the chancellor at North Carolina Central. And so my first set of interviews was with Dr. Akinleye and the faculty of the department. And so I met with them, and they asked me a series of questions. Then I had an interview that afternoon with Dr. Akinleye and the chair or the dean of the school, which was Dr. Roseman. And so she and I talked for a little while. And then I ended up going over to meet with the vice president of academic affairs, dean of the faculty, who at the time was Dr. Ann Taylor Green. And she finished, and they asked me questions about what I had done, what I saw in terms of the program. At the time, there was not a theater program; it was only a theater minor. So they were looking for someone who could teach some of the speech communication courses, but also be able to teach the theater minor courses. And so that communication studies and speech communication background came in handy, because I had that experience, as well as I had this performance experience from being in performance studies with directing, teaching performance. And so it ended up being the best of both worlds. And so I had not quite defended my thesis, and I remember Dr. Green asking me, she said, "Well, have you finished?" And I said, "Well, I have to defend." And she said, "Well, we can't do anything else until you defend."
Okay.
I said, "Yes, ma'am." Went back to the hotel room, called my advisor, and said, "I need to get a defense date." But so those were the three people that I ended up interviewing with. I came back home, I finished, I defended, got a call from Dr. Roseman about a week later offering me the position. And in August of 1996, I moved down to Daytona Beach, Florida, to be an instructor of speech communications at Bethune-Cookman.
Wow, that's a journey. I mean, you were well prepared for this. You're in Bethune. So for the people that might not know about Bethune, guess Cookman University, could you just give them a brief history about the historical part of university?
Sure. So Bethune-Cookman University was founded in 1904 by Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. It was the actual land was a city dump, and the story that we tell, which is the true story, but the way we always phrase it is, it was Dr. Bethune, 5 little girls, $1.50, and a prayer and faith. As a woman of faith, Dr. Bethune believed that even on what was considered a city dump, that she could grow something beautiful. She started the school. She worked through. They sold one of the things that is kind of near and dear to the university of sweet potato pies, because that was one of the ways that she raised money before she became, before she became good friends with Eleanor Roosevelt, and then had people like the Gambles and things that invested in the university. Um, but it was originally Daytona Normal and Educational Institute, and then it grew. It combined with Cookman Institute, which was a male school in Jacksonville, Florida, and that is when it became Bethune-Cookman, and that's when it became co-ed. And then in 2007, under the leadership of Dr. Trudy Kibbe Reed, it gained university status, and so we began offering master programs. So it's a special place. I always say I teach on hallowed ground. It's sacred ground. If you know anything about Mrs. Bethune, in addition to being an educator, she was an activist. She was very involved in her community. She founded the National Council of Negro Women, which is one during the Women's Club movement, one of the strong women's club that looked at how they could do programming to help women. She was a member of the Black Cabinet back during the time when you're talking about segregation and under some of the presidents. So she was a world renowned woman. And during a time when African Americans were struggling, but particularly African American women. And so her vision, her tenacity, her commitment, her faith in God, because she was very big about that. Those are all of the things that I feel like drew me and kept me at Bethune-Cookman. It's a unique place. It's a family atmosphere. I have a number of kids that call me mama that I still hear from, and so that's just the nature of what she grew there.
That's amazing. I really pray that my students that are watching will consider that university, um, HBCU, and yeah, I don't want to make this a pro, yes, but I'm just saying that my daughter goes to an HBCU. She goes to Claflin University in South Carolina, and yeah, so come check them out, guys. You're in charge of the program. Can you describe some of your day to day details within your scope, your area?
Okay, so let me clarify. I am
Okay.
not over the school.
No,
I
no.
do
Oh, you're
direct the
not over the
dance.
School of Communication, just of dance and theater.
Correct. I
Thank you.
I so we have the Department of Communication Studies, Theater and Dance. We have now a dance minor, and I am the person that is over the dance minor. I actually wrote the curriculum for the dance minor, which was approved 2 years ago, and then I also teach in those classes. So within that department, we have 6 faculty. There is our department chair, Dr. Kakeli Nubia-Dinu, who is much more on the communication studies side. Then we have also on communication studies, Dr. Claudette McFadden, Dr. Joanna Showell, and Dr. Paula McKenzie. And then under the theater and dance side, we have myself, Professor Dr. Julius John, and Mr. Jason
Yes,
Hood. And
I
so,
met him.
yes, you've met all of them. And so, between myself, Mr. Hood, and Professor John, we really work with the theater and dance department. Now, I mean, the theater and dance students, rather.
Yes.
I am somewhat, in my opinion, a little bit of an anomaly because, like I said, I originally was hired when it was communication study, or I'm sorry, speech communications, because I had that background. So I have also taught over the course of my tenure there. I've taught classes in communication. I've taught the basic effective oral communication class, which is like a public speaking class. I teach gender communication, which is a class that looks at how we communicate gender and gender identity and what does that mean in the world and the society in which you live in. And then I also teach some of the theater courses like Acting 1, Acting 2, Movement for the Actor, Narrative Theater, Oral Interpretation of Literature. And like I said, now have the dance minor, which is we're 2 years into, I teach the dance courses. So I teach modern dance, I teach jazz, and then there is a course that students are able to use for their PE credit. That is a 1 credit course that I also teach. So yeah, a whole lot of hats that I wear.
I mean, you're not kidding. And this is why when you say I can't talk right now, I got to call you back. Now I totally get it. My wow. Okay. I mean, you just have a wealth of information. I here's what I want to say. Again, my students, if you're listening to me and you're looking for a college to go to, please consider Bethune because and study under my friend. She has all the information, knowledge, passion, history. She would feed into you. That's what I wanted to talk to you next about. From that school, maybe not even your school in particular, but let's say the whole university, who has gone on to like huge success, let's say, that you know of or has come back to help, and who are the alumni?
So in terms of our students, I guess some of it would depend on how you define huge success. We have a number of students that have gone on to work regionally, professionally in regional companies and regional work. We've got a number of students. So, for instance, one of the first students that graduated after I got there, she was a senior, my first year teaching there. Dr. Tia Arline Madison is out, and she ended up going out to California to get her MFA in acting. She ended up getting her PhD. She is now the director of a theater program at one of the community colleges there. She has a group of artists that she works with that she produces. As a matter of fact, in the spring, she did a production of the Vagina Monologues. So she's been working and researching. She created a one-woman show that she toured in that area for the while. We had a young woman, Elvinette Wilson, who also went on to pursue her PhD, was teaching in performance studies, and also is performing in regional theater. We've got 3 students that graduated, Messiah Ross, Jean Hippolyte, and Demira Payne, that went out to LA to go to film school and have been working on producing their own short films. And so they haven't necessarily blown up, but they're doing their thing. They're making it work. They're
Yes.
producing their own art. And then we've got I'm always sort of proud of my babies that were not our majors, but that
Okay.
either came through our classes or came through Orchesis, which is the dance organization that I have, that then decided that in addition to what they went to school for, they also wanted to dance. So I have a young woman, Brittany Stevens, who was there as a biology major, who now has her own company, her own studio company in Atlanta, Georgia, where she teaches musical theater, acting, and dance. She's come here to Sarasota for the last 2 years and done theater at the Sarasota Theater. She's been on contract to work with them for a season. I have a young woman, Shalee Greer Jones, I'm sorry, she just got married, who she has her regular day job, but she's opened her own dance studio here in Daytona Beach and has been doing her dance studio so that she can pass on the love. So we've had students that are making a difference in different ways. So they're not necessarily on the big screen, but they're on their way. We know it's coming.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely huge what they're doing. Anyone to me who can take what they've learned and develop it and prosper and do something different and give back, to me, that's success right there. So I just love to hear these stories because like I'll just say for me, real talk, like when I graduated, I have my degree in mass communications, radio, television, and film, and then I dropped that completely, went to dance, and now look, I'm back now trying to I don't know what this is, but I'm just trying to use what I've learned and help people still. So I'm not helping people on the stage, but I'm helping them through this type of medium, right? So anyway, I just like growth, doing something different. So thank you. I can't believe you remembered all those names, my lord. And they all come back and they help and they contribute.
They
Yeah.
do. Some of them,
Mm-hmm.
we've taught, like Tia has come and done her one woman show for us, and done some
Nice.
other things. Some of them they just keep in touch. We just hear from them often. They call
Very
and they
good.
let us know what they're doing. A number of them, of course, during homecoming, we usually will have that week of homecoming. We'll ask alumni who are coming into town to come in and speak just kind of randomly to just some of our
Okay.
students. Or so a number of them have come back during that time and talked a little bit about their experiences and what they're
Mhm.
doing. And so we get a lot of them that, sometimes they'll
I
call and
love
just
it.
be like, I'm in
I,
town. Can I come
I
to
love it.
class and sit in for a little while? And of course, we
Yeah.
tell them you can't just come in and sit in. You have to
You have to
say
come and
something. You
yeah, do
have to.
something.
You have
You
to.
had me
You have
do that
to.
too. So, okay, so
So
now I want to talk about Daytona Beach and Bethune and Daytona State College, like a mile away, which is like the craziest thing. And then now you're working at both schools. Tell us how that happened.
well,
You're
I was.
amazing.
I was an adjunct there. I have not adjunct there now for the last 2 years. But
Okay.
the shorter version, when I first moved to Daytona in '96, like I said, I was here. I was fresh out of grad school. I was young, didn't know anybody. I was away from all my family and friends. And so I was looking for things that I could be involved in that really helped to feed my soul. And one of those was I wanted to find some place that I could take dance classes. And initially it was just to take classes. And I found a local studio and I was taking classes there. They had an adult ballet class that I would go in and take. And of course, the instructor said one day, she was like, "You've taken dance before. Like, this is usually for our parents that want to learn and just kind of want to do something." And I said, "Yes." I said, "But, this is the only place I could find that had a class that fit into my schedule because I just moved here, so forth." And she said, "You should look into Daytona State. They have classes, and because they're a community college, because at the time they were Daytona Beach Community College." She said, because they're community college, you can take the classes even if you're not necessarily trying to get a degree, and it's fairly reasonable. It's not any more than probably what you're paying to take your classes here and all of that. So I didn't go then because it was towards the end of the year and everybody was, finishing up and all of that. But I ended up seeing that they had a dance concert that their dance students were doing. Went to the dance concert, found out that they do open auditions, that they invite the community in. So made a point the next year to go and audition for their dance theater, and was accepted and started dancing with them. As again, it was my way of having an outlet. Well, eventually, the program was under the leadership of Mr. Kevin Vega, who had graduated from Florida State, who had danced with Dallas Black and Dallas Black Dance Company down in Dallas, Texas, and had now come to the area and was over the dance program. And he's actually, which I realized I never got to talking about my second master's when you asked me about my school,
Yes.
he's actually the one that encouraged me to look at the MFA program at Florida State, which is where I got my MFA, my Master of Fine Arts in Dance, Performance, and Choreography. And
I'm
so
sorry.
I
I'm
worked with
laughing.
him for a while. We did, I would work a little bit, do a little bit of choreography. We did some dancing. One of the greatest experiences I had was he enlisted Mr. Jack Clark, who was teaching at Florida State at the time, to reset Doris Humphrey's Day on Earth for us. And so I got a chance to dance that. And it was one of those moments where you're just like, I really miss this.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I had always said I was going to go back and get my PhD and in communications, but now I had started doing this dance thing again, and that had awakened something in me. I was working with Orchesis on campus, and I was just trying to figure some things out. So I attended Urban Bushwomen's Summer Institute at Florida State one summer. Met Jawale Zoller, who is also a professor at FSU and is the founding director of Urban Bushwomen, and ended up having a conversation with her. She came down to Atlantic Center for the Performing Arts and we had another conversation, and she was sort of like, "When are you going to apply?" And I said, "Well, I guess maybe I should." And so I eventually applied, and once I finished my MFA and came back, Kevin needed the program was growing and they needed an adjunct because he was having to teach some other classes. And so he called and said, "Hey, I have a class this semester. Are you able to teach it?"
Oh, that's so
And it
awesome.
was kind of, so it really started out of me just trying to find an outlet and building that relationship and maintaining that relationship. And so when the time came, there was the door that was open and the opportunity was there.
I remember Kevin very well, Mr. Professor Kevin, and if he's listening and watching, we miss you. Um, yeah, I want to see if I can get him on the show. That'll be awesome. Now, with your orchesis, yes, is it currently, are you still working with it now? Can people audition for your company? Would you like to explain a little bit more about the orchesis?
So, Orchesis is the student dance company that is a part of the department. It had been around for a while, it had died out, and when I started teaching in 96, I had a young lady come to me who at the time wanted to start a dance organization for students because there wasn't really anything on campus unless you were either dancing with the band or dancing with the concert chorale. And she wanted an outlet. Her mom owned a studio in New York, and so she had danced her whole life, and she was trying to get support, but she needed an advisor. And so when she was a mass comm major, and her name was Kalia Hinton. And when she went to Dr. Akinleye, he said, "Oh, you know, the lady we just hired is a dancer. Go talk to her." And so she came and we started Orchesis. And so we do auditions normally in the normally in the fall semester. And we normally do two shows, one in the fall, which is we call it a taste, and we invite the local high school dance groups as well as the local studios to participate with us. And I think one year we had your group also come over from Orlando, which was great. And then in our spring semester, we normally do a show that features choreography by myself, as well as those students that have shown real promise in developing choreography. We allow them an opportunity to really hone those skills by choreographing, and we'll have one or two guests just to serve as some time to allow students to change and catch their breath and so forth.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, of course, right now with COVID, we've had to put a lot of that on hold just because of social distancing rules and trying to maintain, even though we were on campus and we still are for a little bit, we are doing most of our classes and most things remotely. And so most things are via Zoom and those kinds of things. So we've not been as active this semester as we have been. So right now we are trying to decide, look at how we can do virtual auditions and get people interested, and looking at trying to do a couple of virtual performances, some solos and duets and things like that to allow them to just be a little more creative. COVID is
Mhm.
making us think outside the box. We're having to reimagine the way art looks now and what it means to engage in art in these different mediated forms.
COVID. So let me ask about the drop, well, the rate of the student ratio now. How is that now? Because I mean, I know that I guess I just want to ask you, did you lose a lot of students due to COVID, or did they come back? How is that?
Um, I'll be honest, I don't know what the exact numbers are. We had a healthy number of students on campus, and we
Okay.
also had a number of students that still enrolled and did learning remotely. And one of the things, because we knew just from watching the trends, looking at what other universities are doing, looking at how higher education is adapting in general to this, we did work on, classes were offered remotely or they were offered asynchronously, so students were able to still log on while I didn't have asynchronous classes, but while a professor was teaching a regular class face to face, a student that for whatever reason had maybe decided not to return because it wasn't in their, they had health issues or whatever the case may be, could still log on and participate and take the class and still do the work. So, we navigated it just like all of the other higher ed institutions. We offered it, we put it out there, we recruited the students, we brought them in, and we worked in a number of different platforms in order to be able to make sure that they could stay on track in order to graduate and to matriculate.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm just thinking about my daughter, and it's just a tough time. I mean, it's just a tough time right now. We have to make certain decisions. College kids on campus, monitoring, security, quarantining. Yeah, it's a change, which brings me to what advice would you give adult dancers looking to change or transition out of the performance world and into the dance education realm? How, aside from, like, let's say for example, they already have their bachelor's, but they're of age, they have a family, um, so now they want to go and continue and try to work in education. What steps would you suggest? Because it's a lot. If you're a mom, you have kids, you can't go to school full time. Like, are they going to take my credits because I got my undergrad was in, let's say, African drumming, just say. You know what I mean? So, what would you suggest to a person trying to transition?
Depend on what their experience has been and what their education has been. So, for most university settings, in order to teach at the university level, you have to have at least 18 hours of graduate credit in the field in which you are teaching. So, for example, if I am teaching dance, I have to have 18 hours of graduate credit in dance in order to be able to teach. If I'm teaching communication, then 18 hours, so forth. So, but there are exceptions because, of course, we all know if you've danced with Alvin Ailey, nobody's going to look and say, most people anyway are not going to look and be like, oh, but you don't have graduate credits. You danced with one
Right.
of the premier companies in the
Mm-hmm.
world. So it's really going to depend on where you're looking to go um, and where you're looking to enter. So one of the things I would suggest is to be open to opportunities and possibilities. It may be that you start out as an adjunct. Or it may be you start out really because you need to build the relationship. It may be that you start out as a guest choreographer. You come in and you do some guest choreography for the group, or you do a master class or a workshop that allows the university to get a chance to know who you are, to see your work, to see what you do, how you're able to respond to students. But most of the time, particularly if you're transitioning out, if you have not gotten your master's degree or your graduate degree, then most of the time what you're looking at is probably coming in starting initially as an adjunct and teaching maybe one or two classes or doing something along those lines. Like I said, how rigid they are going to be about the graduate work is really going to depend on what other experience and things like that because there's some experience that we would be able to say was equivalent to graduate work because
Right.
it is that kind of experience.
Okay. Thank you for that. If people, we didn't mention that you also do lectures. Um, if anyone out there is listening and they would like to hire Professor Carla Lester to come and speak at their school, or if you have a nonprofit organization, um, how would they be able to get in contact with you to do so?
Well, they can reach me via email. My email address on campus is Lester C, my last name, Lester, first initial C, at cookman.edu, or my personal email address, which is CL Spider, all one word, at yahoo.com. And I do, like you said, I do my big thing has been workshops on worship as arts as a form of worship and arts in the worship experience, and that's one of my my heart is looking at how do we use the arts as a way of expressing our gratitude, our love, or as a part of the worship experience. And so that's what I do a lot of my lectures on. But of course, I can lecture and teach on a number of different things.
Correct. Well, we're going to touch base on that in 1 second. I just want to take a minute to shout out our sponsors. And then when we come back, I want to talk to you just about that, your praise dance and your choreography and what your process is for that. So just give me one moment. We'll be right back. Hi, guys. I'd like to again just thank you for joining in. And we have Professor Carla Lester with us tonight. I want to thank our sponsors, In Style Performance Wear, for the month of October. It's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so we are giving 15%, well, they are giving 15% off of anything pink and any accessories within the store. So that is in style performance wear, 15% off for the month of October for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Our next sponsor we want to thank is TGI Company. They are having a virtual fundraiser for the Student Achievement Institute. And what they would like to do is ask your help to send 10 high school seniors to the program so that we can help them, or they can help them. I'm involving myself in their life, improve on college entrance exams, gain confidence, and strengthen their writing skills. So, with your help, TGI can send 10 high school students, promising students, to the Student Achievement Institute. They are at gofundme.com under TGI Writing Fund. Thank you. Now back to the show. Miss Professor, Professor,
Yeah.
we're back. Okay. So to end this off with grace, you were also gifted with choreography skills and praise dancing. So before we let you go, I'd like to just get into that brain of yours and figure out where your inspiration comes because your choreography is brilliant.
You. Thank you. They come from different places. In all honesty, one of my favorite choreographic works is a piece that I did as part of my thesis concert at Florida State called "With Him," and it is a piece that uses all gospel music. It has three sections. There is a solo at the beginning to Precious Lord that is all instrumental. There's a trio of women in the second section to Walk With Me, Jesus. And then the last section is a solo that for my concert that I performed to In the Garden, which again is an all instrumental version of it. And that particular inspiration, I started working on that piece just in terms of exploring how do we take the art of worship as dance and bring it to the stage and still have that performance quality of the stage, but the sanctity of what we do in church and in the moment of worship and praise, and but still allow that experience to happen in a stage where where other people who may not go to the church to see it would get to experience it. So that was how I started. That was trying to work through that process. While I was in grad school, unfortunately, I lost three people that were very close to me. And my first year there, my cousin passed away. My first cousin, who was only a few years older than I was, he died about a week before my birthday. My third year there, my dad's twin sister passed from cancer. And then I also had one of my sorors who I was extremely close to, who died of a heart attack about 3 days before my birthday. And she and I were only a year apart. So that one was really hard for me. And so the other sections came out of me working through the grief and the process of losing them and some of the things that went on. So the solo in the beginning is done by a male, and it was in honor of my cousin and some of the personal struggles that I knew he had had with religion and spirituality and other issues that he was sort of battling with. So that idea of asking the Lord to guide us through. And then the middle section was kind of just that, when we're going through this life, we never know what's going to happen, and all we can ask is that as long as God walks with us, then we know that at some point everything is going to be okay. And it is always going to be part of the plan and part of the journey, and we're going to come out on the other side. And the solo at the end, originally I was going to set it on someone else, and I couldn't get the dancer that I wanted, and just a bunch of other things were going on. And I ended up one day in the studio while I was working, I was doing the solo, and it was like in that moment, God spoke and said, "This is your solo because this is your moment of understanding how all these pieces go together. Sometimes we have to go to the garden and we have to be there in that moment, in that silence, to deal with our grief, to deal with our joy, to deal with our pain, to deal with whatever it is that we happen to be going through. And for me, it was a lot of things. Grad school, I went to grad school for a master's in dance when I was 35 years old. I am training along 18-year-olds every day, 4 days a week, all day. I was sore. I was tired. I messed up my knee. I had to have knee surgery. It was a struggle. And so that ending solo came out of understanding that struggle. And so they come from different places. I had the pleasure of the honor of being able to work with Dr. Beverly Barber while I was in Tallahassee at the Bethel AME with their worship ministry. And she really instilled in me that it doesn't have to be one particular type of dance, that we can use all kinds, African, jazz, hip hop, all of those, because at the end of the day, it is really still about what's coming from the heart. And so it's not as separate as we want to pretend. It is not, this is my world of dance over here, and then this is my world of worship and dance over here. Because at the end of the day, I am a worshiper 24/7. So everything I do, even if it's not to gospel music, it is part of my gift. It is part of my talent. It is part of what God has given me to give back to the world. So all of it is a form of worship. All of it is about praise. All of it is about being in the moment and living to the fullest in the destiny, the path, and the will that God has set out for me. And so those were important lessons that I learned. And so my inspiration comes from everywhere. Right now, I've been working. There's two pieces in my head that I've been playing around with. One is in terms of some things that have happened on campus and things that are happening in this world. One is called Death Calls My Name, which looks at what happens when people get depressed and deal with suicide ideations. And then I have one piece that I've just recently started playing around with, which looks at this whole idea of what does it mean to social distance. So here we are in this world, So what is that about? How are we coping with this idea of social distance and being separate but together? And so we just kind of play until something works.
Wow, it's amazing. I mean, your walk with God is, I believe, one of the strongest things that people notice when they meet you. Um, the Holy Spirit is definitely around you in all that you do. Um, again, I am blessed to know you. Others that are around you, the overflow is amazing. Again, young students, if you're looking for a college, please check out Bethune-Cookman University and find Professor Carla Lester. I mean, a phenomenal talent. I want to take this to the audience now. Just take a couple of moments and see if anyone from the audience has any questions. Kevin, you would have to place that up on the screen for us because we can't see. So we'll give it a couple of moments. In the meantime, while we're waiting for that, I wanted to ask you about dance organizations and which ones are you belong to and which ones do you recommend?
That you can never really be. I believe you can't be a member of too many. And particularly when it comes to professional organizations, because I think they offer different things. Although we have not been able to go the last couple of years.
Please don't make me laugh. Did you just say you can't be a part of many organizations? Links, Delta, Orchestra.
Part of too many organizations. See, I live with.
You have about 10. Okay.
No.
Normal person.
Because I think that different organizations speak to different parts. So, for instance, I have worked with the National Liturgical Dance Network, because again, that feeds that particular part of understanding and helping me to continue to grow how that works specifically and keeps me grounded in that work. um, I think that for young people, any, you want to think about the American college and the, the ACDC, and it just went out of my head. I apologize. Our university belongs to Black College Dance Exchange, which is a consortium of primarily historically Black colleges that perpetuate and celebrate the Black dance experience. There's International Blacks in Dance. There's the Florida Dance Educators Association, which is always right. So I think it just depends on what it is that you are looking for. But I think it's more for me about network than it is about a specific organization. It is recognizing the networks that you want to build and that you want to be a part of, that are able to help you develop your work, understand your work, and be and grow in your work.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
We had a question. Oh, can you read that,
Yes.
Professor?
Sure. This is hello, Dr. Banks. This is Dr. Corray Banks from Virginia Beach. Have I ever led a presentation with dancers that had disabilities? And unfortunately, I have not. Out of all of the different groups that I've worked with high school, I've worked with small children, I've worked with a number of children, through churches and other organizations, but I have not actually had the honor of working with children with disabilities. And so that is something, or people in general with disabilities. Um, I've been familiar with some organizations that have done that, but it's not been something that has happened in my career at this point.
Thank you, audience member. Is there anything else, Mr. Kevin? Okay. Well, is there anything that you would like to add, Professor Lester, that I might have left out that's important and you want to get out?
Covered.
You,
As I say, we covered a whole lot. I think the biggest thing that I would say to your audience is to be true to yourself. To never allow what someone else has to say about your gifts, your passion, to I don't want to say don't let it influence you, because I think that we all need constructive criticism sometimes, and sometimes we need to hear the encouragement. But at the end of the day, if it's what makes you smile and it's what makes you happy, then walk in that and work at it. And that's the other thing, is remember that you are going to have to work at it. Anything worth having is going to take some work. It's not going to come easy. Some days it's going to be great, and some days you're going to go home and you're going to be so frustrated. And last but not least, particularly for those of you that are choreographing or directing or things like that, recognize that it's a process. It is a process. Again, you're going to come into the studio some days and work is just going to come together, and the moves are going to come together, and choreography is going to flow, and it's all going to make sense. And then the next day you can come in and half of it you're going to look at and go, I hate it. And you're going to want to start over. And it's never on some level going to be perfect for you. As much as I love with him, I watch it sometimes now on video, and I'm like, oh, I wish I had done this instead, or oh, if I ever reset it, I'm going to change this right here, because it's always growing and evolving, because it is a direct reflection of you. And as young people, as old people, as middle-aged people, we are constantly growing and evolving. And so therefore, our work should grow and evolve right along with us. And so it's never going to be, quote unquote, perfect. But as long as it is a true reflection of you, and that you have given it your all, that you have done all you can. And as one of our professors who we celebrated this evening for her 90th birthday used to say, you've done it in love.
Happy birthday.
Then yes, happy birthday to Dr. Victor. We had a great celebration before we came on here. But then you've done your best. And that's what, at the end of the day, that's what matters, is that you've given and done your best. And so,
Amen. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Please come back again and shed some new light on us to figure out how your season went. I'd love for you to come back and talk more about that with us. Thank you once again. You've been amazing. Can you just give your email one more time for someone who might not have had time to write it down?
sure. Again, my email, I'm going to give you both. My email at the university is Lester, LESTERC at cookman.edu, or you can reach me at CLSpider, SPIDER, all one word, at yahoo.com.
Amen. It's a pleasure to know you. I can't wait to see you and hug you in person. Thank you once again. And thank you, guests, for tuning in with Professor Carla Lester from Bethune-Cookman University in Daytona Beach. And come back next week, Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for my friend, Erica Vaughn. She was a Rockette, Broadway star, cruise line, Disney dancer, you name it. You got to be there. She's gorgeous, smart, talented, has lots of information for you. Again, thank you again, I done spoken into existence. Dr. Lester is coming. Thank you so much. Thank you.